Good evening. I'm glad Father started by sharing the difficulty of getting up here. In my position, I speak to hundreds of people all the time, sometimes thousands. But this, I have to say, is probably the most difficult. And it's a small crowd, relatively speaking. You know, yesterday at Mass, Father Santiago challenged us in terms of how do we continue living this Christmas day to day. The joy that we have experienced and we have shared with others, does that go away the day after Christmas? That was his challenge to us. I believe that today's feast day of the Feast of the Holy Family can sort of help us and direct us into what to do next. And I believe that can be found in holiness. And we have to look at the Holy Family, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, to begin to define what holiness is about. We hear that to seek holiness, but what does that mean? Well, let's look at Joseph. You know, I'm sure that Joseph, as a young man, like you and I, had dreams, had aspirations, had plans. Then he's engaged, he's betrothed to Mary. And then he finds that she's pregnant. And you know the story of how the rest goes. How would you have felt? How would we have taken such news? He has a dream, and through that dream, God speaks to him. And these dreams keep coming. He then has a dream to take Mary to Bethlehem. And then while at Bethlehem looking for shelter, he suffers the humiliation of not finding a place to live or to spend the night. And then as soon as Jesus is born, or soon thereafter, the king is after him. So he then, in another dream, is told to go to Egypt. And then after a few years in Egypt, he's told to go back to Galilee. Now, I would dare say that each of us have goals, have desires, have dreams. We have things in perspective of what we need, we want to do. Joseph was the same way. Yet he followed the call and did as he was asked to do. I believe that when you put God's will first, that is a step towards holiness. When you look at Mary, Mary is a very young lady. I'm sure, like Joseph and like you and I, also had dreams and aspirations. Then an angel appears to her, tells her about this extraordinary vision, a virgin birth. Now, she's human like you and I. How do we take that type of news? You know, she did question, because she did ask the angel, how is this to be, since I do not know man? So she was questioning as a human being. But then she goes on in the first chapter of Luke to state that she is the handmaid of the Lord. So she also follows the call of God. Then we have Jesus. You know, this particular gospel passage is the only one where we take a glimpse of Jesus as a child, because really the period is between the birth and then Jesus' ministry. This is the only passage that speaks to Christ as a child. And as you know, back in those days, it was Jewish custom that all male Jews within 20 miles of Jerusalem were to celebrate the feast of the Passover in the temple. Women and children did not have to attend. But Mary, Joseph, and Jesus went to celebrate the Passover. In other words, this puts the focus on the family and how the Holy Family lived their day-to-day life in terms of temple worship. But anyway, back to the story. Jesus, after the celebration, the family leaves, but Jesus stays behind. Mary and Joseph are not aware that he is behind, and when they realize it, in 3 days they find him. And of course, Mary asks, "Why have you done this to me?" And Jesus answered rather calmly and didn't retort in an ugly way, but said, "Well, why do you ask? Do you not know that I'm in my Father's house?" That is at the point, as a 12-year-old child, that Jesus, then there was that exchange from the familial role as a member of a earthly family to that of a mission as the Son of God. That was the transition that took place at that time. In other words, he submitted his will to God. Because remember, Jesus was a human being, or is a human being, just like you and I. He also had to experience the things that we did, and was growing in age and wisdom at the time. So I believe that if we look at the Holy Family, we can see a glimpse of holiness. Now, what does it take to be holy? Well, we learn from the Holy Family that we have to submit our will to God, to do God's will. Question is, what does it take for us to turn our lives over to God? Well, I believe that the voice of God is found in those things that are of interest to us. What is our greatest love? What is our greatest justice? What is our greatest truth? What is our greatest self-gift? What is it that we turn to? I believe that it's in these pieces that we begin to find the voice of God. But do we turn our will to God? And I believe that when we do, we begin to get a glimpse of holiness. And when each family member begins to also follow the will of God, then the family is now on the road to holiness. Is it easy? No, it is not. All of us know that. It's a struggle. But it was also a struggle for Mary and Joseph and even Jesus. So I believe as we reflect on the Holy Family, give us a gift that can then lead us into the next life. And also give us the wherewithal inside if we are willing to surrender ourselves to God. Peace be with you.
The core theme of today's preaching is surrendering oneself to God and doing God's will in a very simple but a very profound way. Hector brought out this theme. So let's try to live not according to our will, but according to God's will. To discern that will, we need to be in touch with Him constantly, through prayer, through scripture reading, by keeping up the commandments and receiving the sacraments worthily. Let's thank Hector for issuing this, bringing out this beautiful time. Thank you. Please continue to pray for him and for his family.